Gary, we have lots of people on Coffee Chats here this morning. I'm so excited to see so many faces. That's awesome.
Don't you just love this?
Yeah, it's awesome.
I'm learning to really like it.
We're all
nice
learning
to see people.
We'll get started here in just a moment. I think Katie's still letting a few folks in. In the meantime, I hope everybody has their coffee, or in my case, chai tea. Okay, I think we are ready to start. It looks like most everyone has joined us. Good morning again, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Chats. This is our weekly presentation that Economic Alliance puts on, and you're in for a real treat this morning. We have two very dynamic people, leaders, and just downright nice people, and you'll enjoy what they have to say. A couple of housekeeping items first. We all know the routine. We've been doing this for 8 months now, doing Zoom calls. So you'll see that you have been put on mute, and that's not because we don't want to hear from you. It's just so we don't have any background noise for our presenters. However, we do want you to participate. So any questions you may have during the program, please put them in the chat between myself and Katie, who's the mastermind working behind the scenes here that keeps us running. We'll be monitoring those questions, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. I would like to welcome and acknowledge any elected officials who may be online with us this morning. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day. We are recording this seminar or webinar or session, whatever you want to call it. So just want to give you a heads up on that. And then lastly, the slides that you'll be seeing today, part of the program, you don't have to worry about taking notes. We will be sharing those afterwards. So Katie will be sending out a thank you. We'll include that file. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our two speakers. First of all, Mayor Barb Tolbert, a wonderful woman, and she's been mayor of Arlington since 2012. And before that, served on the Arlington Airport Commission, where we've been working on the Industrial Jobs Center in 2008. She's carried that project and vision forward to implementation, and that all of the projected timelines. And she will be telling you more about that. It's an exciting program. And after Mayor Tolbert, we will hear from Lisa Lefebvre, who is the CEO at the Port of Everett. Another wonderful person. You'll just enjoy what she has to say as well. She's been with the port for more than 15 years in various roles, and the information she'll be providing to us this morning, it's very valuable, and we appreciate both of you being here this morning. So Mayor Tolbert, I'm going to kick this off and have you start us off. So thank you again, both of you, for joining us. Mayor?
Thank you, Gary. Good morning. Apologize if my screen freezes. We're kind of doing a neighborhood pod group for all of the students that have to learn. And they do these different pods at everybody's house, and we all lend our Wi-Fi to them when they have so many students. So if I get disconnected, I will connect back in. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here for the coffee chat this morning. I look forward to these each week, and I hope you do as well. Today, I want to share some information about the Cascade Industrial Center, which is a manufacturing center located in the cities of Marysville and Arlington. And it has been a bright spot for us during this COVID interruption to businesses. So I'm happy to share a little bit of information. Katie, you want to go to the next slide? I'm just going to give you a little background facts on the Arlington-Marysville collaboration. It began in 2008, and it was to identify and begin the process to seek a designation of the area in the southern part of Arlington and the northern part of Marysville, where manufacturing and industrial uses already existed. Arlington amended its comp plan, policies, and goals in 2012 to address the proposed manufacturing industrial center designation. So this was a lot of work that's been going on for a long period of time. In May of 2013, Snohomish County Tomorrow's Planning Advisory Committee was asked to form an economic subcommittee to begin the process of a countywide commitment for a designation of a countywide manufacturing industrial center. That didn't exist prior to our request for the county to make that designation. We had a few hurdles to reach. Our ultimate goal was to be named a regional manufacturing industrial center. And the requirements for what Puget Sound Regional Council would designate as a manufacturing industrial center were some hurdles that we had to overcome. In 2013, we had a little over 4,300 jobs existing in the manufacturing industrial center, and the minimum threshold for regional designation was 10,000. Throughout these slides, I'll tell you about how that growth has happened. So the coordinated investments in what was called the Arlington-Marysville Manufacturing Industrial Center, prior to being called the Cascade Industrial Center, was to allow it to function as a regional center and focus on production, especially in advanced manufacturing. We wanted to leverage businesses and support the manufacturing industrial activity that was across the region. And after the 2014 OSO mudslide, we really got some steam behind this designation when we did an economic redevelopment plan for the Stille Valley. It really clarified Arlington's role as a job center for the lifeline in the Stille Valley. This is where people came for employment for family wage jobs. There's a broad range of economic opportunities and industries within the manufacturing center. Employment-rich businesses contribute to the growth of the center, and these include businesses in advanced manufacturing, production, construction, aerospace, food processing, mass timber, as well as a broader manufacturing activities. You're a little ahead of me, Katie. I'm gonna have to speed up here. The entire success of the Cascade Industrial Center has been on collaboration and partnerships, which Snohomish County is so well known for. And there's a lot of you on this coffee chat this morning that have been partners with us in this, and I want to thank you. Efforts include Community Transit, Port of Everett, Economic Alliance Snohomish County Health District, the property owners and the business community, as well as the citizens who are engaged in the sub-area plan. So here's a little timeline. After the OSO mudslide, we did a market study to take a look at the AMEC to see what the capabilities were, what the readiness was of the land to be developed. In 2017, we received some grant funding from the Community Economic Revitalization Board in a partnership with the City of Marysville and the Port of Everett to create a sub-area plan. The future of the Cascade Industrial Center, being unique that it is multi-jurisdictional, we wanted to ensure that we had planning that would dovetail together. So where we were going to put in infrastructure and roads for mobility through the CIC, Marysville wanted to make sure their plans could dovetail into ours. So we wanted to try to avoid any roads to nowhere in the CIC. In 2018, the Puget Sound Regional Council did a study on their framework. They call it the Regional Framework Study, to look at their designations for growth centers and manufacturing industrial centers to see, and they ended up changing the definitions and the designations and what the requirements would be to be into the centers. Katie, could you go back one slide? I wasn't quite done there. Thank you. So in 2019, each city adopted a plan with their councils that commit to work together to file a joint application in 2019 to receive a regional designation. And that regional designation was granted in May of 2018. And that really kicked off, along with the Tax Act passed by the present administration, identifying opportunity zones throughout Snohomish County. The Cascade Industrial Center was identified as one of those opportunity zones. Go ahead, Katie, you can move now. Thank you. Also, in January of 2019, Snohomish County Executive Dave Summers declared the Arlington Marysville Manufacturing Industrial Center, or the CIC, as one of 2 potential projects of countywide significance. And the intent was to ease the permitting and improve the chances of recruiting new businesses and supporting the expansion of existing businesses. Go ahead, Katie, we'll move to the next one. We've seen great growth in the industrial center in the last several years with a diversity of businesses. Go ahead, Katie, next slide. Across multiple industry sectors. So the acreage in Arlington's CIC is a little over 2,300. Currently, we have permitted on the books now 5.1 million square feet of manufacturing and industrial space. And in 2009, we had 1.09 square feet of leased space in the CIC. So some of the investments in the new projects are working out well. Over 24 million in capital investments in 2019. And currently there's 13,538 jobs, which is a 90% increase in 3 years in the CIC. And that's first quarter of 2020. And based on the growth numbers and the anticipated projects and the interest we're getting in the CIC, we're anticipating creating another 11,000 jobs by 2040. So we'll truly have built a job center. I wanted to give you a slide that showed some of the diversity of the businesses that were coming in. And what we have seen since COVID is a reduction in the aerospace expansion, business expansion, which we all know based on the state of the industry at this time, is likely to continue, but a strong manufacturing base, maritime businesses, some warehousing and distribution. Because of the airport in Arlington, we've seen an expansion in flight line businesses. One of the nice things about the CIC is it's uniquely positioned with not only a lot of land ready for ready parcels to be put together, but access to transportation off the I-5 corridor through 3 state highways, Highway 9, Highway 531, and Highway 530. Also access to the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Rail, and then our great partnership with the Port of Everett. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to my good friend and business partner, Lisa Lefebvre from the Port of Everett.
Thank you, Mayor. It's exciting to see all the stuff you've got going on up there, and happy to be a part of that. I will share my screen. Good morning, everybody. I just want to recognize my commissioners that are here. We've got Commissioner Simpson, and I don't know why I've got, oh, this was the thing that Katie was warning me about, the spotlight. Let me do this. I wanted to recognize our commissioners, Commissioner Simpson, Commissioner Bachman, and Commissioner Steiger, who I think are on the line. So with that, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes, Lisa, everything looks good on our end.
All right, thank you. It moved around really quickly, so I wanted to make sure I caught everything. So as the mayor said, really appreciate the partnership with the Cascade Industrial Center. I'll talk a little bit about kind of just the port's economic outlook and how we fit in to help support the mayor's efforts up in Arlington and Marysville as well. So a little bit about the port. So one of the things that's critical, and it aligns with what the mayor was talking about growth up in the Arlington and Marysville area in terms of jobs, advanced manufacturing, distribution, maritime, is there is a direct link between advanced manufacturing, distribution, and trade. As the only international seaport in Snohomish County, we serve a critical function in the overall economic outlook for not only the Cascade Industrial Center, the aerospace industry, but also Snohomish County as a whole, with a growing emphasis on wood products that is occurring out east. We believe very strongly in a balanced waterfront concept with land use compatibilities that support these facilities of statewide significance. It is a lot of the investment and activities down at this working waterfront with Naval Station Everett and the port that helps stimulate, fund, and grow recreational and light industrial growth around the county. So I just want to mention that because they are very much interconnected. In actually right before COVID hit, we were underway with an economic impact study. As you know, we had gone through a significant growth period with bringing a significant amount of construction projects and developments online. The result of that at the end of 2019 was an increase over 2014 of over 4,000 direct, induced, and indirect jobs, supporting $7.9 billion of economic value in the region in terms of direct business revenue that we support, 4.7 billion in income and local consumption of goods as a result of activities. And then important for our region, especially now, is 433 million tied to state and local taxes that's distributed through a variety of methods, whether it's B&O taxes, leasehold excise taxes, property taxes, so forth. The other big key thing is that the Port of Everett is not a tonnage port. We don't bring in a significant amount of volume of cargo, but the cargo that we bring in is very high value, oversized, and critical usually to the overall infrastructure of our region. And as a result, we support anywhere between 21 and $30 billion of US exports annually. So in 2018, we started a visioning exercise to look at how can we continue with most of our economic development and lands in Everett and Mukilteo programmed and in a future use for those under execution. How do we look forward? How do we move outside our boundaries and help other areas of our county and region with some of the tools that we have in our toolbox? And so the commission, after a 2-year public process, adopted a 10-year strategic plan that promotes that outward growth from our boundaries. We are probably one of the largest, actually, we are the largest port in the state that is not countywide. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but it does impact us. However, because we are an international seaport for the county, we are able to do business outside our boundaries. And that's how we've been working with the Arlington and Marysville communities. So in terms of budget, I am happy to report that we were able to navigate the COVID situation, especially with the significant decline in aerospace last year and then going into 2021 with no layoffs. We do have hiring freezes, but we did put into place a budget strategy that focuses on economic recovery and diversification, and the Cascade Industrial Center fits very nicely into that mold. So we are going to move forward on the construction of the Norton Terminal, which is the former Kimberly-Clark project, work on building some of the retail pads at Fisherman's Harbor, doing shoreline restoration and some environmental stewardship at Blue Heron Slough and our Baywood site. And for those of you who transit to the jetty, a new restaurant at the boat launch that is vintage 1970. So that'll be nice. That's a partnership with the city and the county. So why do we add value? Economic development is the sole purpose of ports. We're not tasked with parks, recreation, fire services, education. Our job is to help create jobs. And so we're very laser focused on that. We have a lot of tools in our toolbox for communities that general purpose governments like cities don't have. That includes different financing mechanisms, different foreign trade zones that allow for some cost efficiencies for businesses. We have planning support, logistics. We have an entire team built around economic development, and that serves as a value to different communities. And we think that with our partnership, we help make Snohomish County stronger. So some of the ways we're supporting North County growth is the preservation of industrial lands through different tools. We're helping coordinate 5G Summit, broadband, especially as the mayor mentioned, having to turn off her video and with everyone online, it takes a toll on the ability to do business. We have various tools that we've invested in that allows us to target different industries and recruit businesses in support of missions. One of the things that the mayor mentioned, and we're seeing a very strong focus area, is aerospace is huge. We always want to remain the aerospace capital of the world, but we also need to diversify and kind of balance the peaks and valleys. And so there is a very strong focus on robotics and instrumentation that has a direct sync with aerospace, and maritime innovation and exploration. We're seeing a lot of space interest in the county. So wanted to focus on that. And then you can see the laundry list. You'll get this. I won't go into all the details, but we have a very long list of interactions with the cities of Arlington and Marysville, not the least of which is helping with marketing, communication, and legislative outreach. We are exploring some legislative proposals that can help stimulate manufacturing in not only the Cascade Industrial Center, but the county and the state to help with economic recovery. There is a lot of synergies between advanced manufacturing and aerospace. So trying to keep the employment stable in our region. So that's a little bit on the Cascade Industrial Center. And as I mentioned, it ties directly into our investments at the Seaport. We just got done with the $57 million investment at the South Terminal. The last crane is getting moved into service tomorrow. It was supposed to move today, but we've got a high wind warning. So if you see a giant crane kind of maneuvering through what looks to be maneuvering through the city, it's moving into its final placement down at the South Terminal. And that facility is going to be critical as aerospace ramps back up. The facility and the cranes were designed to support the larger 777X parts. And we know eventually the aerospace industry will recover. And then you can see Kimberly-Clark over here. We have invested between the port and through our purchase and sale agreement requirements with Kimberly-Clark we'll be investing over $63 million to get this site back into productive use. 45 million of which will be funded through the port and the cleanup of the Kimberly-Clark site. We were fortunate to get a $17.75 million grant from the federal government. We will be under construction with this project that will also serve as an environmental cap later in 2021. And so we're very excited to get jobs and commerce back onto this site. As you know, the $63 million is not an insignificant amount of money, which is why the private sector had such a hard time making this project pencil for all these years. The port has patient capital. We're able to invest over the long term to be able to get these brownfield sites back into job producing use. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our partnership with the Navy. Captain Davis was on last week. That is a critical facility, not only for the port in Everett, but also Arlington, Marysville, Lake Stevens, Snohomish, all of Snohomish County. It is the first port reached by the Pacific Ocean. We are home to the naval base, as I mentioned, but also the U.S. Coast Guard. And we are trying to help grow that business, not only Navy assets, but also Coast Guard assets in the Everett home port. One of the key initiatives that we had to do to achieve that was to get a new shipyard back in port. We have always had a shipyard in Everett. It's the industrial hub, right? But we went 2 years without a shipyard and it was noticeable. So we were able to partner with Everett Ship Repair, which is a subsidiary of Nickel Brothers in Whidbey Island, who was able to procure the Faithful Servant here, which is down on Pier 3, which is the largest dry dock we've had in port since World War II. And just last week, it was able to accept a 460-foot Washington State ferry for repair, the Wenatchee, and it's in port right now. It is certified now for Coast Guard. We've submitted for Navy certification, and within 5 years under our lease, the shipyard is going to be required to handle DDGs, which are the destroyers at the base, so that we keep our sailors, our jobs, and our business in our community. So just wanted to mention that. And I know that I see Angie is on the line. I got a message from her last week saying, I think your barge is sinking, but it's actually by design. So if you see that in the future in the port, what looks like a sinking vessel, it's actually by design. It's a submersible barge. So it's designed to do that. Fisherman's Harbor real quick. As you know, we had the catastrophic fire this summer. It's right in line with 2020. I mean, at this point, no one bats an eye about something else going wrong. And so we just, pick up, adapt, and move on. Happy to report they are back under construction. It was just an accident. The North building will be opening in 2021 on schedule. This building will open in 2022. And this is one of the building pads we're going to be building next year for retail. The housing list right now, we have almost 1,300 people on the list for these units. There's only 266. There is a tremendous demand for people wanting to live on the waterfront. And so we know this is going to be the first step in us being able to continue to build out. The other thing too is that with COVID, as I always say, you can't waste a crisis. And with the decentralization of headquarters, our area and Everett, Tacoma, Bellevue, different areas are starting to show up on the radar for potential satellites for different businesses. So we're going to keep pushing on that in partnership with the city and the county. So this is just a snapshot. You can see like the rooftop decks, the design elements, and they are pre-leasing right now. Actually, I think they're not pre-leasing. I think they're actually leasing for the North Tower and taking reservations for the South Tower. We've invested close to $50 million just in Fisherman's Harbor. Another example of a brownfield property being put back into productive use. We were supposed to open our splash pad this summer, but we weren't allowed to because of health guidance. So hopefully we can do that next summer. And then you can see all the different amenities. The city was able to open the Grand Avenue Bridge. We've got all the trails open, the substation, it's fully powered, and we're ready to go. The other thing too is that we've got for those of you who like to boat, but don't want to own a boat because it's expensive, we've got a new boating club coming in. We just signed a lease. It's Freedom Boat Club. They'll be opening in one of our new buildings. And so you can get a membership and come and rent a boat at the marina whenever you want, and actually around the world. Here are some of the concepts of what's going to be built in Fisherman's Harbor. These are very early designs, and they're kind of not reflective necessarily of what they're going to be looking like, but just to get you a sense that we are moving forward with that project. Business Park, this has been in the news quite a bit. We were able to convert an old Weyerhaeuser Mill B site into a new distribution center that supports 800 jobs in the region. And so the last building, which is on this pad right here, is under construction right now, and the entire business park will be fully functional and operational for the first time since the early 90s. And then lastly is the Baywood Industrial Center. This is so this whole complex, it overlooks Legion Park. It once was said to have, I think it was on King 5 News, the biggest eyesore in the state. So that's always fun. We don't own this site. We do own this site. And so we're putting this back into use with a nature trail, shoreline restoration, and a 300 job light industrial center. And so that'll be underway next year. The restoration is under construction right now. So that is a quick overview of what we've got going on. Lots more, but that's some of the highlights. And with that, I will stop my share and turn it back over to Gary.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you, Mayor Tolbert. We do have some questions. Gosh, I mean, this is all exciting. So I'm just going to jump right in because we will get even more here. And I want to get to as many of these questions as possible. So Lisa, I'm going to stick right with you since you're here still. You were talking about the retail pads at the Fisherman's Harbor. So originally, weren't those supposed to be private, but now you said we are going to start building.
Mhm.
And then tagging to that part of the question, will there be any office space there, or is it all retail?
Yeah. So in Fisherman's Harbor, no office space. But in the Millwright district, which is right out in front of Scuttlebutt, that is going to be a big job center. So we'll have a lot of office type jobs out in that center. In terms of the retail, why I said we will be building them, I'm glad someone picked up on that. I would prefer not to have to build them, but we can't get anyone interested right now to be able to build buildings without getting, I guess, one of the major chains to consider it. So we want to be able to bring in and recruit restaurants that are unique and kind of create a fun vibe on the waterfront. There is different groups that you can do a partnership with, but the margin, because it's not a very large project, the margin is so narrow that neither the port, who is required to make a profit, or the private sector would be able to make money. And so it essentially was left with the port building it if we wanted it to be done anytime soon.
Oh, okay. All right. So timeline on that. Do you have any takers? Can you tip your hat and give us any teasers?
We actually do, surprisingly. I'm given the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, you would think it would be pretty, no one would even come meet with us. We have been incentivizing people to come up and meet with us. It's very hard to get people to invest in Everett without having them actually come and see what we've got. And so we've been incentivizing people to come take a look and get boots on the ground. And that's been pretty successful. I can't share who we've got that we're working with, but I can tell you that some of the more marquee restaurants would come in the later phases once the market has stabilized on that site. So it's going to be a progression.
Okay. All right. Well, that was a good enough cliffhanger. You'll keep us on the edge wanting to know who's going to come in. And that'll be fun. Like you say, it'll be a good vibe down there on the waterfront.
That's the goal. It's going to be experience.
Very much so. So we can't wait. I think there's probably nobody online, though, that can't wait as much as you. You're ready to get it launched, too, I'm sure.
Yes.
Mayor Tolbert, I'm going to switch over to you real quick, because we've had a couple of questions that are tied to the airport. And you'd mentioned, oh, and by the way, I'm so glad the name changed from AMIC to CIC. It's so much easier to say.
It is, sounds better.
It does. And you had mentioned the uniqueness in the proximity to the airport with the CIC and such. So kind of a two-part question for you on this would be, one, has there been any kind of economic slowdown because in the operations just because of what's happening right now? And then the other person was asking about you knew this was coming, any plans for expansion or growth as we hear different rumors about maybe another larger regional airport in our area?
Oh, great questions. Yes, we all know that the Puget Sound Regional Council just finished their airplane or commercial aircraft capacity study, looking at the capacity in our region and realizing that SeaTac will not be able to fulfill the capacity with the growth in the region. There's been a little bit of stalling of that with COVID as people aren't traveling, but there is great anticipation that that will bounce back. There is a legislative committee from Olympia that has been tasked to look at future air capacity needs and how they would fulfill those, whether it would be finding a green site to build a brand new airport, or whether we would switch to a more regional system like California has, where you have smaller airports located in different areas to move people through. We will begin our next master plan segment for the airport in 2024, dovetailing with the comp plan. But right now, I think that the investment in infrastructure for Arlington to do commercial operations is a big hurdle. Our runway is 5,300 feet long. It would have to be a minimum of 7,000 feet long. And so we think the airport's role will probably be an expanded role in recreational aviation, general aviation, as well as supporting the manufacturing industrial center, maybe with some cargo activities and things to align with the port.
Okay, yeah, and I know the runway length, obviously that's a huge undertaking. So it's a
As
big,
well as the infrastructure. Payne Field was uniquely positioned with a long-term, over $10 million investment by the FAA to upgrade the control tower. It had a 10,000-foot runway. It's a fully controlled airport. We're a non-towered airport in Arlington. I personally, I love our airport the way it is. Being a pilot, I think it's one of the best airports in the state to fly into as a private pilot. And I would never want to see that activity diminished.
very well said. Thank you, Mayor. Lisa, switching back to you, it's kind of on the same flavor, if you will, talking about commercial air travel and such into Arlington, perhaps, and goes into the tourism industry. We've been asked, any long-term plans or any foresight as far as cruise ships coming into the Port of Everett?
Yes, we get asked that quite a bit, and I say the same thing quite a bit. So I apologize if you've all heard me say this, but you know, the cruise industry is a very it's kind of like freight. You know, if you have two major container ports right next to each other, there's not enough business to make it viable or attractive. The same is for cruise. So we've got the Port of Seattle and Port of Vancouver, British Columbia. And so there's just not enough market for kind of the cruise industry in the middle, especially now. Seattle has shuttered a lot of its plans for new cruise terminals. They're actually consolidating their cruise business, which was a growth industry for a while. So in the short term, absolute no. And also just even in our deep water ports, you know, we are home port to the naval base and Naval Station Everett. And one of our primary focuses is land use compatibility. And, you know, big cruise ships are not compatible with the Navy base in terms of moving people and business and so forth. We are, however, looking at other tourism opportunities, smaller cruise vessels that can operate out of maybe the marina, think of like a Clipper, something like that, something more that's more condensed and smaller that can operate in our marina facilities. And we've also got a lot of interest in seaplanes, being able to come in and out of the Everett Harbor for San Juans in various locations. So those are some of the tourism related things that we're getting interest in exploring.
Sure. Oh, that's exciting. That would be fun. This question just coming, pardon me, but I'm just going to read it because I want to make sure I'm getting the gist of it. It says, one of the major issues of the Seattle port is freight transportation in and out of the port. With the partnership with Marysville, Arlington, what transportation infrastructure is planned between the two locations? And I'll let either one of you address that, or both of you.
Mayor, do you want to start?
I think I'll just start by saying what we've seen. One of the things I wanted to mention in my presentation is we've seen great investment in the infrastructure through the growth of the CIC. Just in the last 2 years, $8.2 million in particularly road infrastructure, both public and private partnerships. So a lot of our development is coming with investment into infrastructure to improve those transportation lanes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. We have seen investment, as with anything, infrastructure and transportation infrastructure is vital to running a seaport. It's also vital to economic development and quality of life. So we do have a lot of needs, not only in the 529 Broadway interchange, which is a major bottleneck between the Port of Everett and the Arlington Marysville area. Essentially, Everett is an island. If there was ever a major situation, a lot of the ways out of the city is by bridge. And so we've got a lot of infrastructure investment that we are focused on. The other thing too is we've got Smith Island, which is one of our partners is looking at building a loop rail system. There's about 17 grade crossings between the 4,000 acres of the CIC. And so being able to have a hub to service that offsite is going to be really important. In terms of freight in and out of the port, we are constantly in contact with the city about, freight doesn't bend, no landscape medians, wide turning radiuses, making sure the light pole or the light signals are high enough so that the freight doesn't hit it. We actually paid a couple years ago to go through the entire freight corridor and raise the lights because they weren't high enough. And we do have a $41 million allocation in the Connecting Washington package to improve the turning radiuses and freight heavy haul corridor from the Seaport to I-5. So there's a lot of investment that's being made in transportation infrastructure, but there is by far significantly more that needs to be done.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you. That's and I remember that project, part of it anyway, Lisa. I remember the widening of some of those streets and some of those lights and such, so those trucks can make those corners. Our friend Dan from the city of Everett, Dan Ernest, you both know him. He's wanting to know if there are any updates on the development of Smith Island Railroad Terminal.
Yes, so that's what I was just mentioning, is that they are working on permitting for the Smith Island Terminal. We are in contacts with them. The idea being that they would try to stand up that service, but they need to have a main user before they make that investment. And so with actually Mayor Tolbert has a pretty large developer that could potentially be a good user for that infrastructure. And so I think we'll see more stuff coming out on that project in the coming months.
Oh, good. And Dan also, he's indicated here that the city's moving forward with that annexation to help support that terminal. So that's good. And that just shows a great partnership. We love that.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to change gears here just a little bit. Mayor Tolbert, how is the cannabis business in Arlington?
Oh, that's a great question. The cannabis businesses, just like every other businesses, have suffered a little bit at the beginning of COVID, but they seem to have rebounded well. And with this last voting cycle, I think you all know 4 or 5 additional states have now authorized recreational marijuana use for their participants and citizens. So we're starting to see expansion plans in the marijuana business. And we have a couple of our large producer processors, they call them, which are actually the grow operations indoors, are going through some major expansions in our CIC.
And you guys hold the title for something in that arena. What is that? Like the most or the highest, something within the state?
Yeah, I think we were one of the jurisdictions that when the I-502 passed by the voters, me and the city council looked at it. Arlington voters overwhelmingly passed I-502. So we figured we needed to get to work and figure out how to fit these businesses within our framework with causing the least disruption to the community. And so we worked really hard with the industry on a regional level to understand what their needs would be and what the challenges would be for surrounding businesses or neighborhoods, and write our code appropriately so that we would cite the businesses appropriately for the least disruption. And we tracked then in the beginning for the first 3 or 4 years, public safety responses and other things that we had heard about through the I-502 campaign that could be negative factors. And we saw none of that impact in Arlington. And in fact, when the state legislature redid the tax framework for the 502 industry in the very beginning, what we saw is the majority of our businesses took that tax relief and invested it in their employees. So we saw a bump in the annual wage as well as benefits being provided to employees in the industry. So shortly after they started here, probably 3 years, we did a wage study. And the I-502 was paying significantly above what aerospace manufacturing was paying at entry level with a better range of benefits.
Right. No, and I know that you and I have actually had a conversation around this, and I know that you have done an excellent job as far as forming a partnership with that industry, and it's important. So thank you. And
Yes,
I've been
early
called-
on, we asked them to self-regulate, you know, and
Absolutely.
so we asked them to form the Arlington Cannabis Coalition so they could self-regulate and talk amongst each other and share best practices and learn how to have those relationships. And what I was really surprised to see was how well they integrated into the business community. They quickly became real contributors to the community through Rotary, through adopting parks, through supporting the food bank and the family resource centers. So in that sense, they really lived up to their commitment to the community.
No, absolutely. And I really admire your community for working together and the partnership that you guys have formed with that, because that's interesting. And I've been called out publicly here in the chat from Dan talking about, so I apologize if I offended anyone when I said the highest. I didn't mean it in that context. I meant like the most. So choice of words. Thanks for making my morning. I appreciate that. Lisa, I'm going to come back to you real quick, because you touched on the KC site a little bit. Can you give us a 30,000 foot overview of what that project really is, you know, in terms that most of us can understand?
Sure. So it's going to be, if you look at what our shipping terminals is now with commerce, freight, vessels, it's going to be essentially look like that, with the exception that the warehouse is going to be a job center. So the first floor is going to be for cargo related use, whereas the second and third floor, we expect to have jobs in those two floors. So we're doing a condition assessment on the building right now. The commission has indicated wanting to keep the building in port control as opposed to leasing it out in its entirety to another private entity so that we can maintain flexibility of our cargo operations. So essentially there's going to be a short-term and a long-term plan for the site. The short-term plan, which is to get jobs back right away, is going to serve as an environmental cap. So once Kimberly-Clark is done with the cleanup, which they've removed 14,000 dump truck loads of contaminated soil, we've provided them river sand, high quality river sand from our dredging upriver to backfill with another 14,000 truckloads of fill. But that's the way it's going to be left. And then we'll come in with our project with the utilities, high quality pavement, all of the infrastructure that's needed to run a maritime commerce facility. And that will serve as a terminal and as an environmental cap to secure any contaminants that could be stray on that site. So that's kind of the 30,000 square foot or 30,000 foot level. But then one of the reasons that we're looking at doing it is to be able to provide flexibility. I mentioned the shipyard. The shipyard is pretty tight right now. We've got several tenants that are right in that confined area. And so having this additional space allows us to move forward with our other businesses being able to expand, and then also getting strategic seaport designation. That's going to be critical in supporting not only the U.S. Navy, but also the U.S. Army. We are a backup for the 833rd in the U.S. Army. And one of the things that they need is additional, what they call upland space, to be able to stage their cargo to be able to deploy. And so that's another thing that this facility will serve. And up until now, we haven't had the space to be officially designated.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. We're excited to see that. That has been well, I don't know how many years it's been, but it's
10.
basics 10 years. Not that you're counting, right? Yeah, I mean, just speaking from the general public, we're very excited to see action go on down there. So thank you for that. You called it Baywood. What's the timeline for that? Because that sounds really cool with all the trails and such.
Yeah, so we'll be under construction. We actually are under construction right now for all the shoreline restoration. That is a historic site with the Tulalip tribes. And so we're building the restoration in a way that meets kind of the natural environment of that site. And that project is underway right now in partnership with the Department of Ecology. That'll be done by February. And then the expectation is that later that year, our private developer Latitude will come in and start the upland construction, which would be the buildings and the trails. So 2021, 2022 timeframe.
Okay, great. And then we'll get rid of that distinction as far as being the ugliest eyesore or whatever it was that.
Well, I don't know. We still have Geldwin we've got to tackle, but we're getting there.
Name. So Mayor Tolbert, I would be very remiss if we didn't talk about the economic recovery and economic development and include small businesses. Arlington certainly has your share or fair share of small businesses. What are you guys doing? What's the community doing to help those businesses that maybe we could see other communities do?
Oh, thank you for asking that. Yeah, we do have our fair share of small, we call them mom and pop or those personal owned businesses. And COVID has been particularly challenging for them. You know, my experience, most of those businesses are born out of passion and entrepreneurship. Somebody wants to be their own boss and they have a passion for what it is they do, and they turn their passion into a business. And typically they're undercapitalized. And they don't ride long recessions well. We found that during the 2008 recession. When I took office in 2012, we had on our main street, I think 23 empty storefronts. And then after OSO, which happened in the spring, impacted the summer travel and the tourism traffic that Arlington was dependent on. So we had a tough time of it then. And we began to look at how can we help these businesses build resiliency? That was part of our economic redevelopment plan, is that there has to be some resiliency in a small business, and you have to be looking forward as hard as it is, because most of them are looking month to month. And so how can you help them and support them into building a more long-term plan, be able to, and so we've seen some of the impacts of that in COVID that shows that we've had some success in identifying some resiliency techniques. And again, we relied on partnerships. There's great resources in our county that are available for small businesses. I think Janet Toth, my friend, is on the line here from the Small Business Development Center. Excellent resources that are free to small businesses and can really help them structure plans for financing, for when's the right time to add staff, when's the right time to reduce staff, and how to build that resiliency. For our retail and service-based businesses, we used some of our CARES funding, and we did two things. We engaged with the Washington State University's Metro Extension Center, who did a lot of work for us after OSO and during the America's Best Communities competition. That was about building the resiliency into our small downtown businesses. And so we brought them back to do some work with us during COVID, like how are we doing on this sustainability and resiliency, and what do our businesses need? And most small businesses needed some help moving into online marketplaces, moving into safe way to do commerce, contactless ways to do commerce. And so we put together a marketplace, Shop Local Arlington, for all of our local businesses, and funded it where they could develop. It's not, if you're familiar with Etsy, it's an Etsy-like marketplace to pull them through the fourth quarter. And particularly with the new restrictions we all were handed on Sunday, in terms of further reducing the amount of public that can be in a retail space, to give them a place to branch out and find a new customer base and sustain them, and to help them develop some more marketing savvy for what I think is going to probably be the norm even post-COVID, which is these new marketplaces, a cost-effective way to expand your customer base outside of your city or your region even, by showcasing your products right and learning how to market in that market space.
Yeah, it's so important. And I know you guys are doing a great job up there. Thank you for sharing that. I want to wind this down. I want to be very respectful of everybody's time. I appreciate both of you. Do you have any closing remarks, any words of wisdom that, or even advice as far as that the community can do to help support you? Lisa, I'll start with you if you have anything.
Thank you. I think just the big thing is that, knowing that even though industrial may not be the prettiest thing to look at, it is a really critical function for our overall economy. It helps keep people at work every day. There, Everett and Snohomish County is a working manufacturing town. And we need to have those assets on our waterfront to be able to preserve that. So I just want to stress the importance of that function in our overall economy and making sure that we preserve and protect our facilities of statewide significance, not only at the Seaport, but at our airports, on our highways, on our light rails, transportation infrastructure. And that foundation is really key to growth.
Very well said. Thank you. Mayor Tolbert?
That was well said, Lisa. I would say that come and take a look at the Cascade Industrial Center, because I don't think industrial always is dirty. There is a new era of industrial and manufacturing that are clean jobs, that are in beautiful spaces, that care about the environment that they're being set in and want to have those amenities for their employees. I would tell you, if you know people who are looking for work or have been misplaced, please have them check the Arlington area, because we have a couple of employers coming online that are going to be hiring in some big batches. And my Family Resource Center told me yesterday they have a list of 100 businesses in Arlington that are currently hiring. So we are open for business. And I think, some of the people who are facing those financial challenges from COVID, the evictions that, moratorium that will probably be let go soon and stuff. Now is the time for those families, those individuals to position themselves to succeed in the future. And we're happy to support that.
Well, thank you very much. And you're right, because the CIC actually houses one of my favorite cideries. So, and it's not dirty, it's nice, it's fun. So
It's a beautiful place.
it is. So Lisa, Mayor Tolbert, thank you both very much for attending. And more importantly, thank you for your leadership in our community. We really do appreciate you. Glad that you were able to join us. And for the rest of the group, thank you for joining us in our coffee chat. Our next coffee chat is not until next month. Believe it or not, December is around the corner. This will be on cybersecurity, which is extremely important for all of us, especially since we're all doing Zoom calls during the day. And I will put out a request. If you have a topic or even a potential speaker or presenter that you would like to hear, or you feel that they would be of value to our community, we'd love to hear from you. So please reach out to us at Economic Alliance and we'll see what we can do to get somebody lined up. As you can see, I mean, we've had well over 100 people on this call, and it's just been very popular, and we have all of you to thank for that. So with that, I want to say thank you again for your participation, for your attendance. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Believe it or not, it's next week. So be thankful, and most importantly, be safe. Goodbye, everyone.